Any family, we are ready in Nupawe. Lovely weather today, belle beau temps aujourd'hui. And it's time once again to catch the CTD experience. It's more than a radio and social media vibes, huh? It is truly an experience. Believe me when I tell you that the connection is connecting. If you do not believe me, then ask my good friend Nigel Francis. In fact, to let me get Nigel's answer. Nigel, is the connection connecting? How are you? Good morning. Everything on time.
Everything on time. It's connecting. It's connected. It's connecting. Mm-hmm. Everything is good.
Nice.
How you
nice.
doing, my dear?
I'm fine. Yeah, interesting week. Looking forward to next week as well. Nigel, by the way, I'm going on vacation from next week. Mid next week, they're about Nigel till October, we. Or maybe November.
Until October.
Yes, Papa. Yeah. Sometimes when you work a lot, you accumulate a lot of days. So yes,
that's
Nigel.
From now till October.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
but I'll see how I can carry the studio with me. I'll see what we can arrange.
Either you carry the studio carry you, but we have to talk.
Whether I'm on a plane or on a train or boat or whatever. Yes, I can carry the studio with me.
Well, you're extending the B-Day, you're extending the birthday all through October.
Man, I don't know about that. Yeah, that gone. That pass and gone in Nigel. Very quiet.
I know.
Very
but
quiet.
I hope you had a great day for the birthday. Happy birthday again.
Yes, thank you. I got what I wanted. There's just peace and quiet and there's sleep
but
all
that
day.
Is beautiful. That is beautiful. Nothing better than that.
I tell you. Yes, Nigel. So we are saying it's a whole experience, right? On connecting the dots.
It is an experience. It is one which allows those who are listening to connect, those who are viewing to connect, and those who go back and look at it to make the connection again.
I tell you.
So that's the beautiful thing about it.
Yes, every Saturday at 9:30 a.m. the City Report is on fire. Nigel, what would CTD stand for in the context of cooking? Maybe a one pot. How would you?
In terms of cooking a one pot, CTD would be. Let us see.
So like DPG is dumb.
Yes, CTD would probably be cooking. Well, I guess you would have to go for dumpling. No, let me see. Let me see if Toto dumplings. Because I already see now.
Well, naturally you have Toto. That's good, man. I would say C for kubuyo.
Kubuyo, yes.
DT for Toto. And we can use dumplings, for the D for the dumplings. But I see that was something right. Nigel, it sounds like a recipe for Malva too. Toto.
Let's put dash in instead.
Okay, dash in.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Or we can say Kai, Tanya, to me. A
Tanya, here you go.
But a Creole word would sound better though, way boy.
Yes, a Kubuyo with Tanya and dashing. How else we can say?
Let us help us out, family. Send the comments on the book.
But, yes. Let us know.
We want to cook.
I see you here already.
Wow, very early. We want to set up a bouillon, man.
Very early. That's good.
CTD bouillon. But that bouillon, not bouillon, dumpling. As if
it's a whole mixture. It's a whole mixture.
Something not right.
Like the Commonwealth. I know. CTD. We want a Creole thing for CTD for cooking vibes behind it. We have the Kubuyo Tanya dashing already. We have what else we can put in there? A Kalaloo.
Right, but Nigel, you're not bad, man. Nigel, a Kalaloo.
Yes,
I like that.
Kalaloo.
Yes, a crab, but Nigel, if you have to go,
starting the thing now.
They come in, man, Nigel. Yes,
they come in.
But
crab,
I think you have something to start with T by not saying that, no. No boy, all in that.
You holding that one to yourself?
Yes, me, Papa. I shall be told, please proceed on leave immediately. I not say that.
Starting today.
Yeah, starting today. Yeah, man. But Nigel, they're playing with.
Oh yes, they're playing.
Whoosh.
They're playing. They give us 2 days of problem already, but they're playing. They're doing. They look like they want to do well.
Well, I hope. I think they trail India by what? 352 runs.
300 plus.
And
yes.
And they are on 86 for 1.
Which is good.
Yeah,
Not
bad, but
not bad considering what happened the last time. Not bad, And I mean, test debutants, Kirk, McKenzie there, trying to hold his own. So
So not too bad. Let's hope they keep up.
Great day.
You know, because sometimes it can give us a heart attack, you know. Yeah, sometimes you never stay up late and look at West Indies cricket.
Boy,
you know?
that thing just
and then you have a little confidence that they will move on, and you might just take a little snooze, maybe just 5 minutes, and when you wake up, Nigel, everything is
that's
just
it.
Yeah.
Oh, why are you still looking at it and you're saying, but you're not looking at that thing again?
Yes, sir.
And you're still staying up and looking.
I tell you what they have done to us.
That's what West Indies cricket can do to us. But we certainly wish them the best today. Yes. I hope they can make it through. Well, and I hope when Ali comes into bat, he's going to be there for a while.
Yes, I mean, we are praying. We are really keeping our fingers crossed. But after that performance in the Commonwealth there last week, it left a bitter taste in my mouth. And so, to me, that cricket, not really cricketing, but let's see what happens. I think Jadeja...
Let's see what they can happen. I love the fact that they're continuing to brand our shirts, and I love to see the Dominica splash across the shirts.
So that's
I'm hoping they can bring some Dominican vibes and get it right today.
Yeah, definitely. I think Jadeja Nigel scored his 19th Test half century.
Yes.
And I think Kohli scored his what? Was it this 29th?
29. Yeah, he now has 2900s and 2950s in his Test career. So that's amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing.
That's amazing. Over 8,000 plus runs, So continues to show that he's one of the leading Test batsmen. Maybe all rounders, but definitely one of the leading Test batsmen. Continues to show that. So that's good for India. Hopefully that's it for them. They don't bat again. Well, no, we want them to bat again, right? Because if they don't bat again, it means we lose, right?
But Nigel,
so we want them to bat again.
I'm not saying too much now. Nah? By the way, Nigel, our CTD family member, Billy Doctorow, he has been made an honorary, I think, lifetime member. No, I want to get that right though. Of the West Indies Cricket Umpires Association, something like that. Yeah. Yes. So we say congratulations to him.
Yes, congratulations to him. I think they had their recent meeting in Cayman or somewhere around there.
Yes, that's true.
So, Billy Doctorow, good morning to you and congratulations again. Lifetime membership, it means they can never take you out. You will always be there.
Yes.
So, congratulations on that, my brother. Wish you continued success as well, Oh, before I forget, Mrs. Matthew, Curtis Matthew, mother, tell me, make sure I tell you good morning. So before I forget and before the program goes too far,
so you tell Mrs. Matthew good morning
from home, good morning from mommy. She wants to tell you good morning.
Okay.
Continue doing what you're doing. All right.
It was her birthday as well last week Sunday. We shared the same birthday.
So you know too much.
Mrs. Curtis Matthew.
So I'm saying everything. So happy, not happy. You see, I make you happy, Mamute. You have like Mamute now.
Yes.
You know Mamute?
Of course I know what is Mamute. And Dipali and
Dipali. Okay,
and
you have
like
Mamute now.
Yeah, man.
But good morning to everybody, though. Alvin Thomas, you were like 5 minutes, but that's okay. You are here, so good morning to you. Josephine Johnlers, good morning. Muriel Stroud, good morning. Stanley St. Rose in Atlanta, good morning to you. And everybody else, Smokey, good morning to you. See you later on. And everybody else.
So like Vado, Lauren Joseph. It's a while we haven't said hi to Lauren Banis Roberts, Nigel.
Oh, yes. My dear friend Lauren Banis Roberts. Good morning to you, my dear. Yes.
And Jacinta Banis, Julian Rogers. You know Julian Rogers, right, Nigel?
Of course I do.
Okay, so let me say good morning to him as well, and Richard Lord, Dr. Dublin, Eva Francis as well. She listens a lot. You know Eva Francis, right?
Well, of course I know.
Okay, Eva. Yes, sir. You know everybody, right?
Yes, everybody I know.
Yeah, and a lot of people listen. There's this lady at Dowasco. She lives at Bath Estate. I can't remember her, but she's Miss Figures. She works at Dowasco. She always listens. So let me say good morning.
She always listens. Well, good morning to you, Derek Liverpool. Good morning to you. All the others. We haven't said hi to Terry and Bang before. Right?
Yes,
good morning
but
to you, Eva. Good morning to you. All the original City family members. Good morning to you.
I see Alvin Thomas there. Well, early. Good morning to you as well. Hey, Nigel, quickly.
You don't see tell you happy birthday too? You don't read that part?
Okay, I haven't scrolled down. I'll see. Thank you so much. By the way, Nigel, I'm not sure if you looked at the comments last week after the program. Sonia Williams believes that you and I should do stand-up comedy.
Papa boards.
Nah, man.
According to them people, see all crosses now.
Yes, see. So I'm going on vacation from Thursday, Nigel, of next week, and I will sign up for classes on how to become a stand-up comedian.
Okay, pass it on to me. Pass it on to me.
Why my children may be saying, but what happened to my mother and the boy? They say, they talk to me, man. Anyway.
Probably when you come home, they say, Mommy, what was happening
there? Yes, boy. Anytime I see that mic, I just get something that just stick me away.
Something that's happening, a finger stick you.
Finger stick me. There's a song like that, right? A booyah.
Yes, man, the finger stick me. Yes, you're not coming now. But there's a Creole thing. There's a Creole saying to you, for when a finger stick you.
A bagay kapwa.
Yeah, you're not coming now.
Not a bagay kapwa.
When a finger just stick you and you want to just. You even know what happening. A finger stick you. You remember what it is. But it's something like that, you know?
Yes.
But the week was good, right, my dear? Everything went well.
Yes. Yeah, it was a good week.
All right.
I see Shells Joe saying, "Mip, we just fix things." What is that about, boy? Bonjour, leve ça. Pleasant good morning to my lovely people. Hi, Josephine John Lewis. Belated birthday. Okay, I saw that from Alvin Thomas.
Right. I haven't seen Winnie Green yet, and the others. I haven't seen Carl Kofi James. They're late, but good morning to them still.
Yes.
You know,
good morning to them still.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, we appreciate. Nigel, my show. Oh, but the AC off, man.
We sure the AC not working today?
No, I put it on. So, Nigel, we have a guest, Papa.
We have a guest. Yes, we do.
And it should be a very enlightening discussion. I think that is something that we have to talk about. Definitely have to talk about.
Yes.
So, what we're gonna bring out now, Nigel?
Well, I think we should. You know, and one thing I like about her is that we didn't give her any instruction, but she followed well. She didn't even come on until we say we have a guest ready to come on. She was just there listening to us and wondering what are these two people doing.
Yes, we say we're crazy.
But that is great. She followed instructions. So we do have a guest, Dr. Sophia George.
People maybe they say we're crazy.
And we're going to find out so much about her and find out the work that she's doing and, you know, everything else there is to know.
All right.
Hey, good morning, Paben. Thank you. All right. So good morning to you, Paben. I'm Sarah. I know you're listening. So good morning to you, my brother.
Good morning to all. So, Nigel, it's time for us to bring on our guest. And I just have to say that Connecting the Dots has touched on a number of health issues. We have had guests who spoke about the battle with cancer, kidney failure, and dialysis as well, Alzheimer's disease, and other health challenges. You remember when COVID-19 read its ugly head, Nigel? We spoke a lot about vaccines, and I can recall when we had Dr. Annette Fontaine on, and we also had Dr. Anne-Marie Laron. So these names come to mind. Anne-Marie Laron Richards. So, yes, really take pride in exploring educational topics, particularly discussions that focus on health. There's an increase in CNCDs in Dominica and the world over, of course, and the war is on to fight this. So it is really a pleasure to have this guest on. So, Nigel, let me give you the honors and bring on our guest, an old girl of the CHS.
Well, I was going to say from one lady to the other, I'll have you welcome her in. But that's okay. Good morning to you, my dear Dr. Sophia George. Sophia, she says it's fine. It's a pleasure to have you on Connecting the Dots. If you have not been listening to the program before, make sure from now on every Saturday, 9:30 to 11, you tune in to Connecting the Dots so that we can have a different guest. But it's a pleasure to have you. I really appreciate you accepting the invitation. And thank you so much for joining us this morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm well. Thank you. Thank you, both of you, for inviting me onto the show.
All right. It is a pleasure. It is really a pleasure to have you on. So, Nigel, how do we begin?
Listen, my back where was that?
I know that. I see things happening, but I'm not seeing
myself. Okay, all right. Since you know that, that's okay. Since you know that, I only saying Sophia, but since you know we're not seeing you, it's okay. That's all right. Yeah, we're happy to have her. You know? So yes, Dr. George, we actually like to begin from the beginning. You know, we like to find out like what part of Dominica this person is from. You and I shared a little joke when I read the bio and I saw something. I'm like, oops, is she really from Dominica? But she said yes. And I tell her, I said, you know what? I'm gonna tell her she have to erase that part. I gonna and she have a part she's saying something of Caribbean. I tell her no, change it to something of Dominica. Give
Well,
Dominica.
Nigel, did your homework? I did a little research, but I did not.
Yes, of
I did not
course,
see
of course,
that,
of course. But it's a pleasure, my dear. We're gonna start from the beginning. We always like to do that for our guests 1st. So just kind of connect with us. What part of Dominica are you from, first of all?
Sure. So I guess I was born and raised in Goodwill, and we also live in Wall House. So not I wouldn't I mean obviously Wall House is part of Blue Bear, but I spend a lot of my time when I'm not in Wall House in Goodwill, where my grandparents were or are.
All right. So you're Goodwill resident with a little bit of Wall House. And we'll find out a lot more about Goodwill. I wonder she thinks she has
yes,
we'll find out a lot more about Goodwill.
Where exactly in Goodwill,
Nigel,
right?
When she said Goodwill, we have had past guests from Goodwill, and they always think that Goodwill is it. Or
yes.
past guests from Canefield. So Goodwill and Canefield in particular. So it would be interesting to hear what Dr. Sophia George says about Goodwill. So yeah, I'm listening.
Yeah, so our grounding in Goodwill is Solomon Lane. My grandfather's home is still, I think lots of people use it as like a marker. It has a boat in front of it, Mr. Harris. So I was born on that lane. That's where I grew up for a lot of my time. And then we also lived on Greens Lane. And so there are other folks who were born and raised there who are still friends today, family friends. And then Wall House. So yeah, so what do I think of Goodwill? Goodwill is great. Like I have lots of friends from there, It was easy access to the beach. It was a good environment growing up. Lots of kids lots and lots and lots of children. So lots of playing on the streets and on the savannah, following my uncles and aunts around.
Okay. Yes, Nigel. So we have to we have to go back to some stuff that we want to know about, obviously.
But of course, we
want to know about preschool days and go on.
Yes, and, growing up in Goodwill, what was it like and all that sort of good thing, So we're gonna try to tie in the primary school. Did you go to Goodwill Primary School or did you go to a different primary school, preschool?
Yeah, no. So I went to the creche in Roseau, and then I went to Convent Prep and Convent High.
Okay.
So I didn't go to school in Goodwill at all.
I don't know. You went to creche?
To creche?
No.
I can't recall, but I doubt though.
I
know I went to preschool at the social center, but as far as creche,
but that is creche.
That's creche now. But
there's you got a creche.
Okay, all right. I was thinking more of like when I was like maybe months old, and then I would have gone downstairs because the creche was upstairs, and then would have anyway. So I went to creche.
Okay. So you went to creche, and then from there you went to what primary school you said?
Convent Prep.
Convent Prep. Okay, so tell us a little bit though about, if you can recall, the early days in Goodwill, being on the Savannah, Lindo Park, and being around the friends. And so, what was it like?
From my recollection, it was a lot of fun. I was just recalling the other day about specifically like the summertime is when we got to, I would say, be more adventurous. There was all these summer school classes at St. Alphonsus, or even at the Goodwill School in the summertime, and at different churches. So that is what I recall from like growing up in Goodwill. Lots of kids always playing, lots of parties at home, always doing dances, making choreography. I don't know if kids still do that now. I have a boy, so I don't see that. But so yes, it was like a quietish childhood, like just a lot of activities with friends around. And I had lots of cousins, or I have lots of cousins, so that was also part of my growing up. I think I'm excluding the fact that I used to go to Collyho. So my mom's family are Parilas from Collyho. Okay. And my father's family, Georges, are based in Calibishi. And then we have a family friend who is based in La Plaine. So my summertime was split across those spaces until I think I was in high school, when I would do more like out of country travel during the summer. So I had a very active summertime and weekends also, visiting family in the different villages.
So like now summertime you'd be like picking mangoes and
Oh yes,
going in the river and doing all of that.
yes. Oh my goodness, yes, river time and jumping off cliffs and oh yes, reminiscing. Yes,
Those were the days,
things that we can do now. It was very freeing when you think of the restrictions that we have on our own selves. But yeah, so it was that. It was definitely going to the beach, going to the river, as in Lap Lane in particular, in the river, hiking through bush and people's land and waking up too early in the morning to pick mangoes that have dropped. And the smell of burning wood. I when I think of home, I think of that a lot. Even in Collyho, the smell of cocoa when people are about to make cocoa with like the cinnamon, the spice, and the bay leaf. That smell of the wood. That's like those are memories of
bringing
home
back,
for me.
yeah, man, bringing back memories of those good old days. I like that. All right, so
that's like that. This is what heaven is all about. This is paradise for real. You know what I mean? Yes.
All now, so Nigel, I'm looking at some fish I have in the studio, some cucumbers. And
you see the trouble you just been, Yeah, don't do that to us. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, all right. Okay, I take that back. But there,
yes,
I've seen it.
She doing that to me every week. She has something in the studio and I can't get it. Yes. Stop bringing things where I wanna please everybody. So Sophia, in terms of so having gone through, the Goodwill area, then you went into convent prep. That's where you did your primary school. What was convent prep like for you then? Were you still very active, or was it like you started getting into the books more or whatever?
Oh yeah, getting into the books more is an expectation throughout. I just say that's a thread throughout my formative years. I guess because of the family that I was raised by with, my mom was in education, so there was an unspoken rule.
I know you know her mom, right?
No, I guess I know, but so who is your mom?
My mom is Janet Harris George. She was a lecturer at the college.
Oh, okay, wow.
George. Ma George. Yeah, so schoolwork was important. So I was always serious about it. Maybe not as serious as she would have liked me to be at different times, but nonetheless. But convent prep, I made some really, like, the people that are still, some of them, my very close friends, are folks that I met at convent prep, who are still like my friends today.
Okay.
And so that's part of my formative time too. The principal at the time was Mrs. Johnson. Like I can still remember Mrs. Richards, like my different teachers, Mrs. Allport, Mrs. Burnaby. I may be forgetting. I'm seeing their faces now and forgetting some of them. But yeah, it was a good time. That's why you make lifelong friends.
Yep.
And then you start the common entrance, as we call it.
Yes, I started common entrance. I think I passed. That was to the chagrin of my family. That's when I was like talking about, not applying myself. Anyways, then I got to go to convent high school. Yeah, I got to go to convent high school.
So at convent prep, were you involved in like sports, or was it mainly
I was never really into
a sports person?
No, like I have two uncles who were really into sports, like Cedric Harris is still into sports now, and Junior Harris, Austin Harris Jr. Actually, I also have like other sports people, like people who uncles who were in soccer, football. Kelvin Phillip, who is a family member. So I had sports all around me, but I just wasn't into it really. It wasn't. What was I into? I don't know. I did drum majorette, but I think that was in high school for a little bit. I swam. I was in a swimming club at one point. I think again that was in high school. It could be in elementary school, like in primary school. But yeah, I wasn't a big. I mean, I would obviously be active, but not necessarily in an organized sports team or anything.
It's interesting, Nigel, as you mentioned drum majorettes. Remember the drum majorettes back in the day, right, Nigel?
Oh, yes, I do.
Yes. They were really something else.
They were really
on the
something
streets,
else.
especially carnival time.
On the streets, carnival. Oh, yes, definitely so. So you went to convent, not grammar school, right? You went to convent high school.
Yeah, I went to convent high school. And I want to call me an old girl, and I like, what do you mean?
So you're not an old girl or the convent high school?
I'm
you consider yourself what? Tell me.
I'm a lady.
I know. I like that for true, because a lot of times, sometimes I would go to the Dominica grammar school to maybe speak to students, and they'll say, well, you're an old person, you're an old girl, man, or like old person. We're not even old girl now. Hey. So wait, take that back, eh?
Take that back.
We are ladies of our former schools. Okay?
Yes.
Right. I like that. I like that.
Not really.
So a little bit of the convent high school experience.
Oh wow. Well, that was something. Obviously, like every experience in different schools. So yes, I did. There are things that I learned at convent that I repeated this to my students on Thursday, like know what you know. There was a literature teacher called Mrs. Juro, and she would grind us to knowing the things, like know it and know it well. And I use that all the time. Like if it's something you're responsible for knowing, you know it and know it well. Like that is why you're an expert. That's how you become an expert. Actually, develop your ability to become an expert. So yes, like Mrs. Levy was the principal at the time when I was at convent. You heard me talk about drum majorettes. I think that was maybe like first form, second form. Mrs. Tulo was my teacher. Miss Sebra was my French teacher. Monsieur Gumner was also my French teacher. Mrs. Joseph, my Spanish teacher. I had wonderful teachers whom Mr. Macaulay was my biology teacher, who helped me develop my interest in science. And so I did biology, chemistry, and physics. I also in terms of extracurricular, I was in the Police Organization for Youth Development. That was an organization that I think was part of the initiating group, founding group that was led by Mr. Desmond Blanchard at the time. He was the Commissioner of Police. Right, and Nicholas George. So they were the patriarchs of that. But I was also part of the Duke of Edinburgh Award scheme. And so I did a lot of outdoor hiking, camping, of course, skill building. When we look at the folks who were in those groups, we're doing really well. And I think some of that was just like the way that we engage with both the police force, but also the expectations of doing, living up to your commitments and doing what you're supposed to do. And a lot of community service as a result also, because that was like community facing groups that we were able to go to different parts of the country and put on skits. And I had a good childhood.
Nice.
Do you remember anything about the SMA?
Oh, well.
And I said the SMA. Okay, Nigel? I want to be correct.
What I do remember, obviously, like being at convents, our peers were SMA boys. There's some of them still my very, very good friends today. But the things that I do remember is that SMA, they used to go on a fair and they would have CK perform. That was like, there's some things that are like stuck in my memory.
But I really thought, Dr. George, that you were going to say the thing that you really remember what SMA is, that they would just line up outside the gate at the convent high school. And you'd be wondering about what they're doing there. Anyway.
I mean, they used to do that too. But that was not like the thing that I remember is like going to the fair and have the annual fair and seeing WCK perform. And I think RSV, but for sure WCK used to be there. And I think at the time, I don't remember if it was when I was in college or when it was like upper years in high school, when Lester and like they had Bubolipsas, which was like a band.
Yes.
And that was so much fun. Good times. Good times.
Yes. Good times with SMA. Yes. Alvin, I said it for her again, SMA, yes. So good times with SMA. Yes. But so at convent, I think you mentioned Mr. Macaulay was a biology teacher and probably got you interested in sciences. Would you say that it was from there that you began feeling that this might be your, the route to go, the sciences?
So I should also add, when, in high school, so you have to choose the direction, sciences or literature, business, etc.
Right.
At the time, there were, we weren't doing like 12 and 15 CXC courses that I see people doing now. Kids are young. The ones now are like brilliant, I guess, compared to where we were. So my mother instructed me, like, initially I wanted to do geography, and I think chemistry or something. And she's like, no, you have to do all the sciences because it gives you an opportunity to do anything. You can always go back and do business. You can always go back, but you can't go. It's really hard once you start going down a path to go back and do like chemistry, like foundational chemistry, foundational biology, foundational physics. And so I guess some people are also just naturally inclined to one thing over another. And being in an environment that was super supportive in us learning, and having the resources for us to be able to do our work. Like I remember going to the biogas farm. I think it was in not Trafalgar. What's the name of the place with the flowers?
Girardel?
Yeah, Girardel. Yeah, like there was a man who had a farm. I don't remember his name.
Not Avon, but Mr.
James Roy?
Not Avon. What did it?
There's a Roy though, yes.
Roy,
James. So he had a biogas farm, and I remember thinking like this was so cool and interesting, And so those types of experiences, fostered obviously by our teachers, helped one continue to nurture the interest that I have, and then to be able to pursue it. And of course, if you get good grades, it kind of just is like a positive feedback.
Okay, I know you're in school, but I want to go back to the community a little. Of course, even if whilst you were at school, of course, you were in a community. How did you feel being a member of that community, especially when you were younger, even before your high school days? Was the community sort of raising the child then? What can you remember about the community? What sticks out?
So I remember feeling safe. And I don't know why that's the case. I feel that way, or the memory, but it felt like everybody was looking out for the kids. That's why we were able to play on the streets or go to people's homes, and come back okay. Like I don't remember anything happening to anybody. But asterisks, that's like based on what we know, right? So yeah, it felt like people were looking out. For sure, our parents, I would acknowledge that I grew up in a privileged space. Like my parents were educated, I had family members who were educated, my friends and their parents were educated. So there was an they took us around to make afternoon classes, but the community felt safe. And I was also in these groups, in these programs that allowed me to engage with more people outside of my immediate community. Like the Police Youth Group and Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme, from different demographics, even within our small country. Another part of grounding, right? Seeing how people live outside of my little bubble. We have different socioeconomic status in Dominica too. But I felt safe, and I felt I could do these adventurous things with these groups, and be okay.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to bring that in as we continue.
And as you brought that in, what about like the music that you grew up with then? What was happening then? Some of the band, what was going on?
So, music. I should just say, many people who know me know that I have a passion for carnival, but I also enjoy the Creole time, right? So, but my father was worked with the cooperatives, Sophia George. And so I grew up with this rich culture of music. He used to play the accordion. I don't know if he used to play it well, but he used to play it. And so that was that in my home. But also music, of course, WCK, RSB, for Serenade, I was a CK RSB person. Ophelia was obviously, talking about my like elementary and middle and high school days, yeah. I remember hearing her music. Of course, Bob Marley music was being played all the time, everywhere. Like on Saturdays, sometimes I'll hear, like when I hear a song of Bob Marley, I would remember a Saturday in Dominica because that's what my uncles were playing in the yard, for example. Those are the so when I hear certain songs, those are the things that allow me to reminisce about my childhood. Burning Flames from
Antigua.
I like we would go to Scott said to bathe in the hot water or in the beach, and that is like I can remember driving in the car with my father and hearing that like those songs on the radio, and those are the songs that we would do our choreographies to in the summer too.
Okay, wow, so, fun memories you have.
Definitely. So, was your mom a carnival lover too? Yeah.
Oh yes, the whole family. Yes.
Oh, Alvin just said that too. The whole family is carnival, so you didn't take it too far. You still love your carnival.
Yeah, I have pictures of me in like I was in crash. Literally, I was in carnival costume bands throughout. Like from the time I think I could walk, I was in costume.
Nice. So from convent, of course, you went to the state college, right?
Yes, I did that at this. Before it was called Clifton Community College, where the stadium is now. Well, behind the old grammar school.
Old grammar school.
Part of the stadium,
I did.
And you did sciences there? I'm imagining.
Yes, I did biology, chemistry, and math. Oh my goodness, he's gonna be like Edgar Hunter was my biology teacher. The chemistry teacher was Mrs. Richards, and Miss Lewis was my math teacher.
Okay,
I remember, and this is where actually I met a whole group of different folks because now you have people coming from all over the island. It's not centralized, Roseau, Goodwill, that area. So I get to meet new people. I get to actually be in the same school with friends from the police youth group that were also based in like Salisbury or like St. Joseph. And so people like we came together, and again, you get to see a different flavor of our country. I just sent a song. So I'm talking about music. Then it was Buju Banton was like the person that we were playing his music all the time. And I have fond memories of being in like the study room in quotation marks because we were playing music, but we were studying and playing certain songs. And I heard the song and I was at a concert on Saturday, and I sent it to a group of friends, and I was like, that's the song that I remember specifically because of where I was in Dominica in like the 1990s.
Wow. Interesting, Nigel. And imagine when we get to the part where we're going to talk about what she's involved in now.
Yes.
Should be very enlightening.
Build it up to that. Yeah. Build it up to that, So in terms of college, just general, what was college like for you? I mean, you met other friends, other people, but college life then, what was it like?
It was fine. I mean, what else you had to do? You had to do your A-levels, you had to study. So that was the focus of the work. When I was at college, I also started going to oh my goodness, what's the name of the French
Alliance
Process. Thank you. I feel like it's Saturday.
It's Saturday, and you've had a long week. Yeah,
Alliance Process, yes.
Yeah, so I would go to Alliance Process. I don't remember why I initiated that or why it was initiated, but that leads to like my next set of things that happened with my career. So doing that during that time, it could have been prompted by my mother. It's possible. I would go there and look at French movies, and also they had a library. UE was also there, right? And they had a library, and maybe that's why. And then we would access the books. And back in the day, now I sound like an old person. We had the internet, but we didn't have access to information as we have it now. So you still had to read books.
That is true. Books as an integral part of our development.
You had to read the books.
Definitely so. You had to read books. All right, and then from college, of course, notice I've been saying Sophia. I'm going to come to the Dr. George part. I like to start with the Sophia part because all that time you were Sophia.
I'm just Sophia. I'm still just Sophia. Sophia, by the way.
I know. So from college, of course, you decided then, or it was decided for you that you had to pursue higher studies, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And you took to the field of science and to the field of medicine, which we'll talk about in a few, right, Ivona?
Oh, yes.
So what led to that decision?
Yeah.
So,
but did you go from college though? Did you go straight to university, or you
I
went
taught at convent for a year, and I taught French, I taught math, and I taught integrated science. Yes, and so that's why I was like, I maybe need to talk about the Anna's Frances part. And Professor Dr. Grimner, Mr. Grimner, who was my French teacher in my higher years, very influential in like keeping my interest in French. And so, and also that was part of my mother's thing too. She's like, you're going to do French, not Spanish. And I was like, fine. French is more difficult. But anyway, so I taught for a year at convents. During that time, there was a scholarship opportunity by the Francophone Association or organization for Booster la Francophonie. So I applied, and that is how I ended up leaving the island to do my undergrad in Canada.
Okay.
Which was, I did my 4-year undergrad in 3 years, but I did a 4-year undergrad in the language, in French, but in biology.
So those trips to the Alliance Française paid off?
Yes, it definitely paid off. And teaching French for you paid off too.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Right. So Nigel, let's we go to the meat of the matter now, Nigel.
But yes. So now you've left Dominica and you've done your undergrad in Canada. Was there like any kind of culture shock when you arrived in Canada? Was it totally different for you, or you just fit into right away?
No. It was complete culture shock. I was in Northern Ontario in a town called Sudbury, doing my undergrad in French in a predominantly English speaking space. Although there's a pocket of French Ontarians, so they're called Franco-Ontariens, that they're there, and it was isolated. It was cold. I used to think that I was being punished for some things that I did and I shouldn't have done. It was so isolating. It was snow all the time, minus 42 degrees. I was the coldest. I'll never forget that.
Wow.
I will forget many other things, but I will not forget that. Moving through, so I studied. That's all I did. I studied. I made a few friends whom, I just came from Canada a week or two ago, and I was still like hanging out. I stayed at my friend's house from then. It was a culture shock is an understatement. And so I studied, and I made also other good friends whom are still friends today, from different parts of the French world, because it wasn't just me, it was a group of us who had won the scholarship. So from Seychelles, from Chad, from Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, Mauritius, Madagascar. And so I get to meet people from different islands too, learning about their culture, seeing the similarities because they also speak Creole, and also doing a lot of research. So I did, because maybe, or should I wait for you to ask the question?
Go right
We'll
ahead.
get
Go
to
right
that
ahead.
stage. Yeah, we'll get to that stage.
Yeah,
Because I also want. Go ahead.
So my degree was in biology, but I knew even by then I knew I wanted to do like science. Like I wanted my career to be science. I didn't know what it looked like. Everybody expected me to go into medical school. I had actually gotten to UE before I went to Canada, but I chose to go to Canada instead. And so I started doing research in undergrad at a cancer center studying HIV. I did that for a year. I was enamored by all the cool things you could do, things that we didn't have access to, things you didn't even, at the time, didn't even think about, especially from being at home. And the tools that we could use to ask questions about just our biology, about our bodies, about how our bodies interface with the environment. It was really, really, really fascinating. So obsessed with microbes at the time and viruses. My mother was just talking about that last week because I would come home like just talking about how bacteria could make us sick. So obsessed about that for a little bit. But yeah, so that's where like I went all in and I learned how to conduct research. And
it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I wanted to find out from you at what stage of your journey did you decide that you should go down that lane, and what really piqued your interest, in studying gynecologic cancers. But we'll get to that in a short while.
Yeah.
But in your career though, and even in what you were studying, have you ever felt that you were probably disadvantaged because of your race? Did that ever come up? Did you ever see that? No?
Oh boy.
No?
Too many times.
Yeah.
Yes and no, or yes no generally?
No, so yes and no. Yes, because you asked me about how I feel, not what actually happened, right? So I am so it's all about like there is this Malcolm Gladwell has this book about big fish, but in one of his books he talks about big fish in a little pond, big pond, little fish. So although I was very upset and dissatisfied with where I was when I did my undergrad initially, being at this tiny university away from everybody, my friends were at McGill and they were in the US and all these things, and having just being in a big city, obviously bigger institution, and I was stuck in Northern Ontario and this small school that nobody knew. That allowed me to develop my skill sets, for one, how to learning in 2 different languages. I was studying French and English, building really strong relationships with my professors, getting opportunities to do research that many others, my peers at the time were like, how did you get to go do a research project at the Cancer Center? And I was like, I just asked. I was interested. My grades were good. And I went looking because I knew, again, having some type of mentorship in having family members or friends telling you you need this experience in order for you to get to the next step, whatever the next step is. So I didn't feel that then, to answer your question.
Okay. All right.
I didn't feel it then because I was also in Canada. Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. But I didn't feel it.
All right.
But when I moved to my next phase, I saw it.
Interesting.
And it's still the same. It's still the case today. Last week, I went back and I looked and I was like, it's the same thing. I would have to justify why I was interested in sciences when I came from a small, poor country. I remember having to explain that many times. What can you do with what you're doing for them? Or in terms of me saying, oh, one day I'll go back and do something. You know how we always want to go back and do something. So nobody could understand. I don't even think I understood it, but the reason that I was being asked questions about, not because a British person can go back to England and do something, but it's because I'm from a poor country. I of course I had the experience of people asking to touch my hair, all kind of things. But for me, that was a curiosity, rather than a feeling different because of my race per se, or because of the way I looked, but just I was curious about lots of things. I met Native Americans, Native Canadians, Indigenous people. I got to hang out with them on the island and go fishing with my hands. And of course, and so the questions that I would ask would be about them and their experience being a different, I'd never met Indigenous Canadians before, and fishing with my hands upstream, right? So I don't think that was an issue. It was more of when I moved to a bigger city, where there was more people. I was like, oh, bigger city, yay! I'm going to be in a diverse city, but it was diverse outside and not inside walls.
All right.
Powerful statement there. Diverse outside, not inside. I love that, because I know that you're also doing things with diversity and inclusion and equity and so on, which will come to in a few. The research and you deciding to head down into that particular path. for those who don't know, I mean, obviously we've, prepared for this, so we've read the bio and everything else. But for those who don't know, just give us an idea as to what is it that you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today, this week, I would say, I am an associate professor of the obstetrics and gynecology and reproductive sciences. I'm in the division of gyne-oncology. And I'm also the associate director of the Cancer Center, and my portfolio is over diversity, equity, and inclusion. My science is focused on studying, in particular, gynecologic cancers, but I do a bit of breast. I'm focused on the genetics of that and where we are, so a place where we come from, where we are, our nativity, our genomic ancestry, and our genetic predisposition or risk to develop cancer is influenced exists in people of African ancestry, so Black people across the different spaces. So in the States, in the Caribbean, and in Africa.
So that's something that has always fascinated me, and I'm going to say Dr. George now. That has always fascinated me in terms of the fact that when I first kind of heard about it and read about it, that there seemed to be a greater disposition for Black people as opposed to other races. In your research, have you found out any particular reasons why that might be so?
So when I just want to put another asterisk. I did my PhD at the University of Toronto in molecular and medical genetics. So I learned skill sets, although my study at the time during my PhD was on embryonic stem cells and the cardiovascular system. But I learned the skills to be able to ask questions about human disease from the lens of looking at genes, DNA. And so that is how I went into that problem eventually. When I looked around and I having conversations with family members and friends of people who were young and developing cancers who happened to be from the region or Black. And so I asked the question about this in the context of, do we have a genetic, do we have a mutation that we inherited along the lines from our families and our forefathers that increased our risk to developing this disease? So we've done this work, and we've found, at least in our population, that only accounts for about 14% regionally, the Caribbean. So it means that there's another 85% that we have to find. And so that's where my work now integrates looking at other factors that are driving this, meaning with colleagues, so working with psychologists, looking at stress factors, how we internalize stress and what does stress mean, our diet, our exercise, what the foods we eat, what we eat now versus before. The rates of cancer are increasing, and I would say the data shows that always has been for a long time, but not always, has been for a long time that Black people, because the data was also US centric, so Black people have a higher rate of aggressive disease. Men, prostate cancer, women, breast cancer, endometrial cancer, ovarian cancer, and then almost all the cancers, we have worse outcomes. So even if there are less of us proportionally than other populations, we develop a higher rate of bad types of cancers. Not that cancer is good, but there are different kinds that are worse than others. Our tumors, at least for some of the tumors, in particular breast and endometrial cancers, are refractory, so they don't respond really well to the standard of care chemotherapy. So there are these factors asking, like with my colleagues, I'm not doing this alone. What are the factors? What are those inherent things about us? Why this is happening in our bodies? And so I can keep talking, but Nigel, you might want me to pause.
Oh no, we want to go on. What you're saying there is very interesting. What you're saying is very interesting. And I also wanted to find out, Dr. George, is there a sort of noted gap in prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of emerging, how you call it, gynecologic cancers among women in the Caribbean? Have you seen this?
Yeah, so we go across and I'm also part of the cancer control program in the Cancer Center. So we go across the cancer, we call it the cancer continuum, from prevention and behaviors to survivorship, right? So once you're diagnosed, what happens afterwards? Okay. So in the context of prevention, and which is linked to our behaviors, one, there is a infrastructure gap, meaning, for example, for gynecological cancers like cervical cancer, that is really preventable. It's a rare disease in the US, but it's the thing that's affecting us a lot in the Caribbean, in Dominica. And then breast cancer, which is also somewhat some of it preventable, but you can screen and detect early. So the infrastructure I'm talking about here is access to the vaccine, HPV vaccines that help prevent the burden of the disease. And then the other part is our behavior. Like, if we have access to the vaccines, will we take it? Are we doing our well woman exam and doing our pap smears? Are we going to our OB-GYNs or a general practitioner, general, your family doctor, and doing your visits to make sure that we can prevent and or catch things early, because that's where we can really do a lot of good. That's where when people talk about, we've been doing cancer research and studying cancers for so long, and how comes this? Like, we can only do as well as we can, but for sure, when we detect cancers early, it's like a 90-95% survival rate. When we detect cancers late, when it's metastasized and it's all over the body, it's really hard, right? And it gets more expensive, and you need more infrastructure. You need like fancy comprehensive cancer centers to be able to treat a person with metastatic stage 3-4 disease, because you're coming now with multiple disciplines. Radiation, radiologists, radiation oncologists, multiple types of surgeons that for us in the region, we're not fully equipped to be able to do that. But we can, and we do have a lot of primary care doctors. We do have a big network of nurse practitioners and just nurses who are there to take care of us to help prevent these types of things from happening.
Wow. How closely related is diet to cancer?
Yeah, so when we think diet, we actually translate it to like BMI, body mass index, and obesity and so on, and even where it is, if it's in the belly versus the hip, men and women. We know that this is like obesity is linked to about 17 increasing risk for 17 different cancers. So it's not, yes, I study gynecologic cancers, but it's colon, it's prostate for sure, it's breast, endometrial cancer for sure. Like, that is like the biggest driver for endometrial cancer. You think of all the cancers, and then you can think, yes, diet is an integral part of how so that's part of the healthy behavior and prevention side. Our diets has changed over time as we become more developed, as we become more akin to first world, more high index development. I say because not all first world things are good.
Right.
As we spend a lot of money in this part of the world where I'm at to eat well and eat less and grow things and we have those same things at home, and it's like the reverse.
What about acidity and alkalinity? Because you hear at times that cancer cells will thrive in an acidic environment.
That is true.
Alkaline.
That is true. So when we look at the biology of the tumors, they thrive in that environment because that triggers that change in the pH triggers blood vessels to be grown so that they can get more oxygen. So that's the thing. It's the cells are also using a lot of energy. The cancer cells are very inefficient in the way that they use glucose and other molecules to be able to grow. And so they use a lot of energy, just like when you're running and you have a muscle cramp, right? So that it's because of the acidity that has gone up. So the acidity triggers cardiovascular development, blood vessel development, why that is the case. Okay. So when we talk about, and I don't like going into this because it's a controversy, but yes, eating well in general is good for us. I just said the cancer cells like glucose. That's why when we think about diets and obesity, we don't want to feed the tumors. But that's in the case of people like prevention at the same time as of time of diagnosis or early disease. The alkaline part, I had this conversation recently with someone, and I was like, well, we should eat well. Our stomach is acidic. We need the acid to digest the food. And so, of course, we cannot drink alkaline water. We drink alkaline water, but it's not base, because then that's going to drill a hole in our tummy, right? It's not. So but I just say all the time, balance, exercise, stretching, yoga, swimming, walking along the beach. We have all the beach. We have so much land at home with just open water. Wellness in that context. And I know it's hard because it's everybody's busy, but some things that we did back in the day, and I know I'm not being but some things we did back in the day definitely contributed to our wellness, like going to the beach every Sunday or Saturday and seeing kids running around, and I'm hiking, things like that.
Cancer, because I know you've done, that's what you've done and you're doing. Is it a situation where, for those of us who on a basic level, cancer cells are always there, and whenever they get whatever they need to do, whenever they're fed, that is when they kind of develop, or so on. Is that the case?
So yeah, so there's folks who based at Hopkins who's talked about how, when we look at DNA damage and mutations in people who are healthy, we see mutations across different tissue types, but we don't see necessarily cancer cells, or at least the technology that we use are not able for us to detect a cell that is malignant. I would use the word malignant here. But as we age, our body. So originally, the dogma is that cancer is a disease of aging, right? So as we get older, we're exposed. We live in our life, the sun, we drinking a bit of alcohol. All those things are carcinogenic. Eating KFC every other day is not good. High inflammation. Eating, we can eat our pigtails now and then, but not all the time, right? That's just facts. So over time, those exposures increase the chance of a cell being, the DNA being mutated. And it is these multiple exposures, again, over time, that we see cancer in older people. That's when it's supposed to be. But now it's shifted. It's shifting to the left. We're getting, in our population in particular, Black people, people from the Caribbean, and I'll keep to that population. We have almost a decade younger being diagnosed than people who are European, who are white, American. And there's another component to that we may or may not get to talk about. But when we look at our diets, our behaviors, our lifestyle, that when you can see those factors that I just talked about, we do a bit more of those. More fat, more drinking, less exercise. And so, yes, so the things are there, they're dormant, or they're not yet at the stage of malignancy. And our immune system is supposed to see them and get rid of them. The immune system is supposed to see them, get rid of them. The cells in itself have mechanisms, have processes to stop from growing. Obviously, by the time we get diagnosed, it's because it's you can see it's grown, it's done something. So it's been happening in our bodies for a minute. Why we want to do a well man and well woman exams to be able to detect things over time. Of course, there are exceptions to this rule, to what I'm saying, but in general, that's the way things are. Things are growing inside of us. We don't know it. We would hope that our immune system sees and gets rid of them. As we age, more things are happening. And then maybe someone gets cancer, right? It's not every single person.
Interesting information here. And I'm glad that you're seeing all of this, because I wanted to find out from you though, and of course you're doing it, but generally, how should healthcare practitioners maybe go about identifying and addressing the gaps in current practice, and essentially teach best practices to improve patient outcome, and very importantly, to establish preventative measures? I'm not sure if this was too convoluted, or if you get the essence of what I'm saying.
So 2 things. I think you're saying, one, how can doctors do better to help the population and communities interface with them better, or do we have the proper tools and training that we need to be able to identify, detect, and treat
gaps in the current practice?
Right. So doctors and nurses and the healthcare practitioners work exceptionally hard all the time. Part of it is infrastructure. I talked about that initially. Do they have the tools that they need to be able to do what I just talked about, right? So part of it is that, one, advocacy, and maybe and I know they're advocating and saying they need more, but it's resources, it's money, it's or how we invest in certain infrastructure. Okay. The other part is training, continuous training. I am involved in training medical oncologists, gynecological oncologists. I talk about what I'm talking about now with them from the perspective of the prevention side, and then implementing that into clinic, of course, best practices. So training, continuous training. Another aspect is now, again, some things we can't just do on our own. It has to be in collaboration with the ministries of health and upstanding prevention calls, like having a monthly theme of, okay, men, are you getting those who are of age to get their PSA done based on standard of care practices? Do we do that? How much are we? So we can talk about it from the perspective of a patient survivor, a family member who has lost a person due to cancer, but also at the level of the ministries of health and working collaboratively with other societies like this Cancer Society and so on. How active are we in disseminating this information? And then once we disseminate it, so once we tell people about it, do we have the resources for them to actually do something? Right? So if we talk about breast cancer screening, do we have a screening program in place? Can women in Woodford Hill go get their mammograms done? Can they afford it? Is it free? Is it available? Is the machine up and running? So it's a like this balance of collaborative care and policies in place to be able to take care of the whole spectrum of people. I hope that
I'm getting it. I'm also getting that there is this need, for better screening practices to detect and treat women in a timely and more appropriate manner. So I'm getting what you're saying.
But with the need, we need to have the resources in order.
Well, yes, obviously, yes.
So if we say we're gonna have a campaign to like do pap smears, do we have the bandwidth to do it? We should be able to. Actually, Antigua is doing a great job. They have a really good program where they're doing an HPV, which is a virus that is linked to cervical cancer. They're doing an HPV screen. They're actually the models, and they were just in Miami a few months ago, showing how they've been successful in encouraging women to come and have their pap smears done. Get also access to the HPV vaccine and get the HPV typing done, which then tells the doctor or the nurse if this person is at high risk for developing cervical cancer, or if they see little, early lesions that they can intervene.
Okay.
So it's possible for our small population.
Someone is asking me via WhatsApp, is there a link between breast cancer and ovarian cancer? Essentially, is breast cancer linked to ovarian cancer?
Yeah, there's a genetic link to breast, and that's my study actually. So there are genes that are known. If you inherit them, you have a higher rate of a higher risk of developing breast and or ovarian cancer. It's rare that people like one woman will develop both. It happens, but it's rare. What else can I say about that? We also know that if you have a family history, so let's say you don't do any genetics, you don't have access to these types of tools. If you have a family history, so a mom, a sister, an auntie, a grandma, so first and second degree relatives of who have been diagnosed with breast and or ovarian cancer, you are 50%. You have a 50% increased risk of developing one of these two.
Say that again. So you're saying an individual at risk for maybe ovarian cancer with a family history of breast cancer?
Yes. So breast and ovarian, especially if we know the type of ovarian, there are different kinds of ovarian tumors. But the most common kind, if you see a family history is very indicative of any disease, by the way, of any disease, any non-communicable disease. So if you look at your family, uncle had, I can add the uncle too, uncle prostate cancer, colon cancer. These are all part of a hereditary cancer syndrome linked by the same set of genes. But in particular for women, breast and ovarian, if you have a strong family history, meaning mom, auntie, grandma, sister, cousin, from the same lineage, then you should definitely be having a conversation with your doctor in terms of screening and even prevention. There are preventative approaches like removing the fallopian tubes and ovaries at a certain age, having breast reductions done, or at least, again, screening, access to screening. But having a conversation with your doctor is important.
Someone is also asking, what are the signs of ovarian cancer in a woman?
So ovarian cancer is, we call it the silent and deadly disease because unfortunately, by the time you have the symptoms, it's usually advanced stage. So one of the signs is like cramping, back pain, lower back pain. Think for women, when you have your menses, you have your period and you're having like these cramps, it's very akin to that. It's loss of appetite. Like you see what I'm saying, like very generic things, the loss of appetite, like distended belly, that you're not pregnant and your belly is distended. It's a disease that's usually diagnosed in women who are late 50s, early 60s. 63 is the average age that we find. And so you shouldn't have postmenopausal bleeding. If you stop your period, you shouldn't. If you have stopped your period, getting your period, and you start bleeding again, you should go see a doctor because it's not normal for whatever reason. It doesn't mean it be ovarian cancer, but so cramping, bloating, lower back pain, diet, appetite changes, lethargy. Sometimes women like lose a lot of weight, and again, distended belly.
Someone is asking also, Nigel, can
go ahead with the question.
HPV be treated for older than 50 in women? So someone is asking that on the Facebook.
If HPV
can be
like you mean vaccine?
Yes.
So the cutoff age for the vaccine right now, I think, is 42. But if you have HPV, if you have if you're HPV positive, your clinician, doctor, nurse, whoever you're seeing has it depends on what they saw. So it could be a wait and see. So you have to come back every 3 months or every 6 months. They might do a little like colposcopy, like they might take a little piece of the cervix out where they see a lesion forming. But that's, and again, like this is individualized, but the vaccine, the upper age limit is 42.
42. Okay. Yes, Nigel.
Is there any link between fibrosis and cancer?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
I say not at the moment because, it's an ongoing question, in particular for fibroids and women with endometrial cancer. It's really rare to find a malignancy in fibroids. It happens, but it's very rare. But no immediate link.
No immediate link. Okay.
In terms of risk.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about breast cancers as opposed to the other types of cancers? Is that the most common among women? Is that
yes.
one?
Right. So breast cancer is 1 in 8 women, at least this is US numbers. 8 women over our lifetime will develop breast cancer. So that means people we're looking at, people that we either will or have, right? And we likely do. And then for cervical cancer, again, in the US is very rare because we're vaccinating folks at the age of 10, 11, or I can't remember what's the lower limit. Boys and girls, like I can tell you, my stepdaughter and my son have been vaccinated because why not? To prevent them from having a disease or to spread it, right? But in the Caribbean, those countries that have contributed data to the WHO where we are getting these types of numbers, and in Africa it's breast and cervical cancer. In the Caribbean, it's still breast and cervical cancer that are the highest burdens of disease in women. And for men, it's prostate and colon cancer. Lung, maybe, like the lung cancer rates vary based on, obviously, smoking and other factors, but it's not a big issue in the Caribbean as it is in other parts of the world.
Wow. Someone wants you to talk a little bit more about endometriosis.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Another asterisk. I'm a cancer person. Endometriosis is linked to increased risk for like a certain rare type of ovarian cancer called clear cell carcinoma, but it is common in our population. It is there are genes that people are identifying that increase your risk for endometriosis. Endometriosis can be really nasty, can spread all the way to the lungs, and it doesn't necessarily it's restricted to the endometrium or the uterus. And it has, in general, we see higher rates in people who have higher BMI or some obesity, sometimes diabetes. And it can cause or be attributable to infertility, but for the rare types of cancer.
Okay, right. I know you spoke about the HPV vaccine, but I'm just going to a question that someone is asking on the live. My daughter's pediatrician, that's what the person is saying. My daughter's pediatrician recommended the HPV vaccine for her. I declined, especially since in our community in Dominica, I did not have one. And she's asking, do you recommend it for young girls? My daughter is 12. Pros and cons. I know you spoke about that a while ago.
Yeah, I don't know what the con is, but the pro is that once, unless we don't expect anyone to be sexually active in the future, not saying now, it's if you have access to it, this is how we prevent cervical cancer, vagina cancer, vulva cancer, and for men, anal cancer, penile cancer, throat cancer, we think is also going to see lower numbers over time as more and more people get vaccinated. It's a prevention for decreasing the risk of infection by the virus. Okay. And as I said, like my son and my stepdaughter, and I think some of my nieces, and I think I know some of my nieces, but family members have been because. Why not? We take the vaccine for like rubella, like when the babies are born. A week after, two after, we get because we don't want them. I mean, I guess it's because you can see folks get infectious diseases and they die, babies, fevers and so on, like measles, right? With the HPV vaccine. We don't see cervical cancer until it's later on, and we're trying to prevent it. And we know it's best to do the prevention before girls and boys are sexually active, which is why your physician is recommending it.
Someone is also asking, Alvin Thomas, does the research show an increase in younger people getting cancer?
So we've seen trends, as I said, of the shift from, like, if you look at a graph, right? So the bottom is like 0 to 100. The peak's supposed to be like in the 70s, 80s, and then it goes down. We're seeing the shift going a bit left. So younger people here doesn't mean like children, or there's always kids, like, unfortunately there are kids that get cancer. Like there are people get cancer across the entire age range. But the average of people getting cancer is younger, like colon cancer. Everybody knows now about Black Panther, Bosman, right? It's really sad, right? But he got cancer before we even knew that he should get screened. Like he developed the disease before the screening guidelines said he should get screened. So we're seeing that there are calls across Europe and the US for folks to study this, for scientists and clinicians to study what is happening in our demographics, why that shift is happening. Of course, some people think it's diets, right? The types of food that we're eating, not just the food that we're eating, but what's in the food. Like all types of factors that we will be diving into to figure out what's going on.
Wow. More questions coming. Someone is asking me via WhatsApp, what organ does ovarian cancer spread to first? So that's a question there. But is there a pattern? But that's the question from the person.
Yes.
So let us.
So the ovaries are in the peritoneal cavity. It's like floating around. They're not really floating. They're like anchored with some ligaments, but they're not encased in anything. Like when you think about the colon or the breast. So what happens is, first my work and others have shown that the fallopian tubes are the site of origin of ovarian cancer, of the most common kind. The ovaries and the fallopian tubes are next to each other. So the first spread is really the seeding of the ovary. But once you have the ovarian mass, the cells are easily dislodged into the peritoneal cavity. So it's in the belly. It's the diaphragm, sometimes the lung, rarely the brain. Like breast cancers usually go to the brain, the bone, the liver. Ovarian, you'd get into like the belly, the colon, like all the things that it's exposed to. Because they don't have to go far, they don't have to do much, unfortunately.
Wow. And there are men who have been diagnosed with breast cancer as well.
Yes. Men, it's rare, but actually high rates in Black men, interestingly. We think there's a genetic component to that. I have a study doing that right now across 10 countries, but studying breast and cancer in men and women, Black men and women. But yes, men, I think it's like 1 in 50. I can't remember the number. It's not common, or maybe 1 in 70. Sorry, it's not common at all. It happens, but it's not common, and it's usually linked to a mutation in the BRCA2 gene.
Wow, Nigel, the questions are coming. I'm sure you have one.
The questions are coming, but keep them on your end as well. No problem with that. So in terms of, I know you mentioned quite a bit about genes and the fact that there's a family trait and so on. It's important to trace that. So there's a direct correlation between the genes and the possibilities of someone, I guess, developing, if that's a correct word to use, developing cancers?
Yeah. So it's important for us so when I talked about familial history, for places where we don't have easy access to genetic testing, or the cost is prohibitive, like it's too expensive, we think about the family history and we ask questions about mom, dad. If it's for man, usually mom, like dad and brothers, uncles. And so we know, without even having a gene knowing which gene has a mutation that you inherited, we can look at the family history and say, okay, if you're talking to us because you think there is likely a risk of you developing cancers, and then what is it that we can do to prevent or to screen so that we detect the thing early. In terms of having a known mutation, a gene that we identified through sequencing, and we know that this thing is not a good function, it's not functioning well based on the mutation. Again, we know based on lots and lots of data and people participating in research, hundreds of thousands of people participating in research, that certain genes increase your risk for specific diseases. So like BRCA1 and BRCA2, these are two genes that we know very well. We really understood them based on the Ashkenazi Jewish population. But now we know that about other populations, even in the Caribbean. We published this 2 years ago. That those two genes increase your risk for breast and ovary, a little bit of endometrial, I say a little bit, prostate cancer, colon cancer, melanoma, very rare, but it's linked to that. Am I missing another one? So no, those are like the big ones. So breast, ovarian, prostate, colon, pancreas. My goodness, pancreatic cancer. Yes. And so for people who know about their mutation status, there are clinics in place, and we're working with your physician to screen, because there's some things you just can't, we're not taking out the prostates, we're not taking out the pancreas. We're not necessarily taking out the colon, but you can do your colonoscopies more frequently, so that if we see things, that we can take them out before the tumors have spread.
Wow, Nigel, this is a lot of information. And especially when you do some research and it tells you, and of course you would have mentioned that earlier, that there's a higher rate of early onset hereditary breast and ovarian cancer among African American women. Wow. And you see what's happening in Nigeria. We have a lot of cancer cases in Dominica. A lot of cancer cases. A lot of people, have died because of cancer. And it's really a concern, maybe a worry. It
is. And for me, I mean, and listening to Sophia, Dr. George, listening to her, it seems to me a lot of times it's the detection part, is the early detection, or not doing the things that we can do before it gets to that particular stage. Now, very quickly, I mean, we know there are stages: the stage 1, stage 2. What in general are those stages like? What is the progression of those?
Interesting.
Right. So it's stage 0 is, when you do a mammogram and you're just doing your annual visit, or the man goes and does his PSA test. And the doctor might feel something, or you'll see a spike in the PSA. When it's not spread, it's still like under sight. So then there's stage 1 to 2, 3, and 4. Stage 4 is usually metastatic disease, where it's everywhere, or in multiple places, not everywhere, multiple places, depending on the tumor type. So prostate, bone, breast, brain, lung. Sometimes it goes back to the ovary, We know that for stage 0s, they're usually just surgical intervention. Stage 1s, depending on the disease type, it's surgery, radiation, chemotherapy. Of course, as you go further up in number, surgery is not maybe the primary intervention. It's chemotherapy to reduce the size of the tumor, and radiation. And of course, as you said, Nigel, the earlier we detect, the better your outcome. So stage 0 to 1 is like 90 to 95% survivorship, almost in all diseases. That's why we talk about prevention. And when we get further up, then you need more sophisticated tools to treat the diseases, and medications that we may or may not have access to, from the perspective of the Caribbean.
This is depressing.
This is wonderful, Ivone. This is and you know how I feel when I hear and see a Dominican who has mastered the skill and be able to do what they're doing. The pride that we feel as Dominicans, and being the associate professor and doing this. I know we're coming towards the end, so very quickly, Sophia, in terms of your day, What's it like at the university?
It depends on the day, but this week has been intense. I write lots of grants. I do a lot of so obviously I have a laboratory, so I have mentees. I have 4 PhD students. I had 4 summer undergrads this summer. I train fellows, so I have gynae oncology fellows and medical oncology fellows in my lab doing research, bench research. That's the component of the translational research that I do with them. And then I also do global health work, global oncology work. So I get to travel a lot to different really interesting and cool places to be able to study genetics of breast and gynecologic cancers across different countries. So that's what. And then I'm the associate director for DEI. So I have that I do. So the weeks are intense.
Wow.
I can well imagine.
I can imagine. But Doc, are there times when you just feel depressed because you see so much? Does it get to you at times?
Yeah, but so thankfully I'm not my clinical colleagues that have to deal with the patients on a regular basis. And I say thankfully because I have the sanctity of my lab where I can escape. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard, especially when you have people who participate in your studies and you see that they progressed on their medication. One of my patient advocates was a Bahamian 20. She was diagnosed at 21 with stage 3 ovarian cancer, had a BRCA mutation, and she passed away 3 years later. Her mom still texts me, when her anniversary of her death comes up. And so it grounds me in terms of why it is I'm doing what I'm doing when I'm, working with my colleagues in clinic and they're telling me, that yesterday was a rough day for the sarcoma clinic because they had to put people on hospice. I know that because I saw the leader on the, we were waiting to get into the elevator and I was like, how are you? He looked tired. He looked just drained. And he's like, today was a rough day. So there are days like that. There are days like that all the time, unfortunately. But that's what drives us of why it is that we're doing what we're doing. Really.
My final question for you, because I know we're kind of wrapping up in a few. Do you ever see the day when we will see a cure for cancer?
Yes, we have cures. There's the problem, as again, it's when we get diagnosed, right? So we have really effective medications. Part of the thing that we didn't talk about is health inequities, access to these medications, both in the US and globally. And I have a colleague who is doing that right now, working hard with different companies to be able to have the drugs accessible to places where these cancers are curable. Pediatric cancers, lots of it now are curable because of these drugs that we've developed, but it only is when you have access to the medication or you're diagnosed early. I met someone a few months ago who was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer 10 years ago. And wow. She is still alive and well on that medication. So she's still on the medication. I mean, we still have to monitor because we hope that it will never come back. But and so that's a component of survivorship that I don't work on myself, but that there are people who focus on that. How do we keep people once they are diagnosed and treated no longer on medication, cured in quotation marks, and what happens post-treatment in terms of their survival.
Yeah.
So I think so, yes. It's still a lot to be done. It's still a lot to be done, but half of it is access. Half of it is access.
Yep.
Nigel,
wonderful.
Very, very interesting discussion. Sometimes people don't like to talk about that big C. It's something they, but we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it as early detection is crucial in all of this. Screening, a lot of measures that we can take, upon ourselves. Wow, but it's a lot, as I said earlier. It's really a lot. It
is. But information is important, and sharing the information is even more important, so that we can be able to go. Knowing is half the battle, right?
And when you look at a Dominican coming from this, small island developing state.
Yes.
Making such a
any
huge
links,
mark.
by the way, Sophia? Any links with the Cancer Society back home in Dominica?
Yes,
any plans of coming home and sharing, and then any whether it's over the summer for a week or a day? Any plans?
So I've worked with the Cancer Society in the past. When Tina was there, and I think Mrs. Alexander now is the president. But I don't have any immediate plans. I have projects in other countries currently in the Caribbean, but not currently at home.
Okay.
All right. Let's work on that part. Yeah. Let's work on that part. Let's get a project home. So agreed.
Yeah. Okay. But look at the time already.
Yes.
That time has come and gone.
It's that time again.
Yes.
But Dr. George, Sophia, I thank you so much for sharing the information, for doing what you're doing. My daughter is currently in college. She's pursuing a medical track, medicine. So, we'll be in touch, because I think it's a good mentorship and all the rest of it as we've spoken. But overall, thank you so much for sharing with us, for doing what you're doing as a Dominican, as a Caribbean person. So the person who asked where is she based, that's not your business. I'm just joking. She's based in the US though. She's actually mad. But thank you so much for all what you've shared with us. We appreciate it, and we hope that your work continues to bring success to the others.
Oh yes.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed. I remember when we had Yvonne Alexander on, and she was giving her story about her battle with cancer. And Nigel, the plan is to have another cancer survivor on soon again. So we have to keep on, bringing out that message, providing the information. So thanks again.
We'll continue to do.
Thanks again, but we have to end. We really have to end. Dr. Sophia George will keep in touch, and we'll see how it goes, right, Nigel? So when you get a chance, Dr. George, just listen now and then to what we have on. We'll have to add her to our broadcast list, Nigel, so at least you can send her the flyer.
Yes. We'll have to make her put her on there so that wherever she's traveling, where she has like 30 minutes on the Saturday, she can plug in and listen to others.
And I'm sure
we appreciate you.
We'll call her again to join us next time. So thanks again, Dr. George. You take care.
Thank you very much.
All right, Nigel, we'll link up next week, God willing.
We'll link up again, my dear.
All right, take care. And that's it on Connecting the Dots. Join us again next week, Saturday, God willing, for another program.